Hey, it's Terry, and this is the Something Spooky review for Color Out of Space, which was released in 2019 by RLJE and was directed by Richard Stanley. Overall, I've had a very hard time kind of processing this movie. I've had to watch it a few times to wrap my head around it and be able to evaluate it. It really just kind of left me feeling confused the first time I watched it. And now that I've had some time to sit with it, I realize it is kind of what it presents itself to be, which is basically an art house Lovecraft movie starring Nicolas Cage and Tommy Chong. So it's a very interesting proposition right there because it's this very serious kind of horror movie. There is some real gruesome, dark horror in it. It has this very cinematic, beautiful style. But then you have some really kind of just handball performances from Nicolas Cage and Tommy Chong, and it all blends together in this really interesting, confusing way. I've come to terms with it as something of a tribute to 1950s horror movies. Things like The Blob, or Them, or things like that, which were probably scary at their time. So it has that kind of cheese element to it, but it is obviously updated for modern audiences and is still a very serious horror movie. Although, like I've said, there does seem to be some almost intentional kind of B-movie cheese to some of the performances. And that's especially true of Nicolas Cage, who is just the most confusing figure in the world to me, because I had just watched Mandy not long before this, so I've seen what Nicolas Cage can do, but this is very much more what you expect from Nicolas Cage. It's really Nicolas Cage just in overdrive, and you get a lot of it really fast. But it's kind of working with what the movie's doing, but it's also kind of in conflict with how the movie's taking itself so seriously and being so artful in its presentation. So that's where that duality comes in a little bit of what it seems to be trying to achieve. So again, I won't get into specific spoilers too much from there, but I will say that it does end up just going extremely off the wall and very violent and very disturbing and strange. And that keeps that duality throughout, where there is still more of the B-movie kind of cheese in things like the alpacas, and even the way the manifestation of the color itself and the forms that it takes in the world is very cool. It looks great, but it kind of goes back to that classic science fiction vibe. And it makes me think that's part of what they are going for. But then at the same time, you get these moments of very sudden, extreme violence and some just really weird, gruesome images and just odd stuff happening in the movie. There's a super big, crazy moment where that's when like there's no going back, and this movie is going to be very dark and violent and weird. But it comes pretty late into the movie, so I was left wondering for a long time where exactly we were headed still. So it just has this weird kind of mismatch that left me feeling kind of fried. Like I said, I had to watch it a few times just to really be able to process it. The most important thing is that the individual elements are all good. And so even though there is this weird mismatch and it's doing all these different things that don't always feel like they gel, each thing that it's doing, it does very well. And it does lead to just a very strong whole once you have time to process it. It's just a lot to take in on a single viewing. There's a lot of different elements you have to be confronted with, from the extreme performance from Nicolas Cage to the real sudden violence to the beautiful cinematography and way that the movie is being presented. It's a lot to watch in one sitting. I really liked Color Out of Space, but that also kind of makes it just a very complex and inaccessible movie. I'm going to give it a B+. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember to like it and follow Something Spooky for more.